$2,000 ongoing monthly checks specifically targeted at low-income groups including SSA, SSDI, SSI, VA, and RRB. Hello everyone. This is Kadar here and welcome to today's video. I'm so glad you're joining me because today, I'll be discussing something really significant. The proposal of $2,000 ongoing monthly checks aimed specifically at helping low-income individuals. Yes, that's right, this includes those of you on fixed income, Social Security retirement, disability benefits like SSDI, survivor benefits, spousal support, SSI, VA, and RRB. I have all the details right here, and I can't wait to break it down for you. Let's dive in. First, I want to say a huge thank you for liking and sharing this video. Those buttons are right below, and your support means so much to me. Your engagement here helps to spread the word and reach others who might benefit from this information. So while you're down there, don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't yet. It's totally free, and I'm here for you every single day, especially during this time when everything feels a little uncertain. Now let's talk about this exciting announcement. This proposal for $2,000 monthly checks is exactly the type of support I believe is necessary for our low-income and fixed-income communities. A new report, one that I'm excited to share with you, suggests that these payments would be focused where they're needed most. This approach makes a lot of sense, and I'll explain why this targeted assistance is such a strong move compared to what we've seen in the past. Let's think back to the stimulus checks we received a few years ago. In 2020, we got 2 checks, and in 2021, we received 1. But here's the issue. These checks went out to about 85% of the population. In my opinion, that was a major misstep. Those checks should have been reserved for low-income individuals and families who needed that support the most, rather than being distributed so widely. With this new proposal, they're aiming to direct funds exactly where they're needed, and I think that's a much smarter, more focused approach. So, let's get into one of the main points from this report. It uses a concept called MPC, which stands for Marginal Propensity to Consume. This is just a fancy way of saying how likely people are to spend money when they receive it. The report classifies people into 3 groups based on MPC: low, middle, and high. And these categories have a lot to do with income level. For example, low-income individuals generally have a high MPC. This means they're likely to spend almost all of the money they receive right away, because they need it to cover basic necessities. Middle-income people tend to have a moderate MPC, meaning they'll spend some of it but not all, maybe saving a portion. Lastly, high-income individuals usually have a low MPC. They're less likely to spend extra money quickly since their needs are already met. Now, why is this so important? The study shows that when low-income people receive $2,000, they typically spend 80% or more of it within 10 days. The remaining portion is usually spent within the next 30 days. In other words, this money is put directly back into the economy, helping both the individual and the community around them. This high MPC among low-income people is exactly what we want, because it shows that the funds are used immediately for essentials like food, housing, and healthcare. Let's compare this to those with middle MPCs. When middle-income people receive $2,000, they're more likely to spend about half and either save the other half or use it later. While this isn't necessarily a bad outcome, it doesn't stimulate the economy as quickly or as directly as it does for low-income individuals. It's just a middle-of-the-road effect, not as impactful. And finally, those with low MPC, typically higher-income individuals, don't tend to spend these funds at all or use them immediately. They may save the entire amount or invest it, which doesn't provide the immediate boost to the economy that direct spending does. This is why targeting low-income people for monthly payments is such a powerful strategy. It ensures that funds will circulate quickly, supporting both individuals and economic growth. So, why do I think this is such an important approach? This proposal, with its focus on low-income individuals, actually addresses the real needs of our community. Rather than giving money across the board, which we saw wasn't as effective, these payments would go to people who need them most and will use them right away, creating a positive ripple effect. Now, I know some people may be skeptical and think that future stimulus checks won't happen again, but I believe otherwise. History shows us that stimulus payments have been issued repeatedly over the years, and it's likely we'll see similar measures in the future when the economy needs it. The key is to implement it in a way that makes the most sense, just like this report suggests. Now, let's get into the details of this report, and why these monthly checks are such an important conversation. According to the latest findings, $2,000 ongoing monthly checks could significantly impact low-income Americans. These checks are designed to truly support those with the highest financial needs and to quickly boost economic spending. Let's talk about what that means. First off, the idea here is that focusing financial assistance on low-income individuals is a much better strategy than sending out blanket checks to everyone. In previous rounds of stimulus, checks went out to about 85% of the population. But here's the truth. While it sounded good in theory, it wasn't the best approach for truly stimulating the economy. Here's the deal with these targeted checks. Economists use something called MPC, or marginal propensity to consume. This term may sound complicated, but it's really about how quickly different people spend money. It turns out that people with lower incomes, those with a high MPC, tend to spend their money almost immediately. When given financial support, they're likely to spend 80% or more of it within the first 10 days. And that's a good thing, because the whole purpose of stimulus checks is exactly that, to stimulate the economy. Contrary to popular belief, the goal of stimulus checks isn't really about helping us out directly. It's about pushing money into the economy so it can start circulating quickly, helping businesses, creating jobs, and lifting up the overall economic health. So here's the breakdown from this report. If low-income individuals were to receive $2,000 monthly, we'd see most of it being spent on essentials like rent, food, utilities, and other critical needs. This kind of spending gets the money flowing into the economy immediately, which is exactly what policymakers aim to achieve with stimulus payments. By contrast, sending large sums to high-income individuals, those with a low MPC, doesn't have the same effect. These individuals are more likely to save the money or invest it, which delays its impact on the economy. High-income earners spend much more slowly, if at all, and they hold on to the money, which can actually slow down the economic boost that stimulus checks are meant to create. So what's the takeaway here? The best way to use stimulus checks is to target low-income Americans, those who need it most and will spend it the fastest. This targeted approach could be incredibly beneficial in a future economic downturn or recession. Instead of sending checks to everyone, focusing on a smaller group, maybe 50 to 100 million people, those truly in need, can provide a much bigger economic return. In the event of another economic crisis, sending out ongoing monthly checks, specifically to low-income individuals, could make all the difference in stabilizing the economy. This new strategy doesn't just help individuals. It strengthens the entire economic system by creating a continuous flow of money through spending, which is exactly what stimulus checks are supposed to do. So in short, if policymakers focus on issuing ongoing $2,000 monthly checks for a set period, targeted specifically at low-income households, it could be the most effective method for economic recovery. We're talking about a streamlined and efficient approach, putting financial power directly in the hands of those who will use it right away, which in turn keeps the economy moving forward. Now, you might think that these checks are just sent out to help us buy things we need or want. But believe it or not, there's a bigger picture at play here. So why do they send stimulus checks? The primary purpose isn't necessarily to help us directly or out of kindness. The main reason is economic stimulation. They want us to go out and spend that money. The idea is that by putting money into our hands, we'll spend it on goods and services, which in turn drives the economy forward. This is why they're called stimulus checks. They're literally meant to stimulate the economy. Now, here's something interesting. Studies have shown that people with higher incomes, who have a low marginal propensity to consume, or MPC, don't spend these checks as quickly, if at all. For example, if you give a high-income person a large amount like $22,000, chances are they're going to save it or spend it very slowly. This is the opposite of what the government wants for economic stimulus, because the whole point is to get money circulating in the economy quickly. On the other hand, when stimulus checks are sent to people with lower incomes, who typically have a high MPC, it's a different story. These individuals are much more likely to spend that money right away on essentials like food, bills, and other necessary expenses. This is exactly what stimulates the economy fast. If they were to focus on giving $2,000 ongoing monthly checks to low-income individuals, studies show that around 80% of that money would be spent within the first 10 days. That's $1,600 of every $2,000 quickly going back into the economy, which is precisely what's needed to boost economic activity. The remaining $400 would be spent within the next month. This kind of spending is ideal for economic stimulus because it keeps money moving throughout the market. So, the key takeaway here is that low-income people with high MPCs are actually the best group to target for economic stimulus. Sending large amounts of money to this group ensures that the money doesn't sit in bank accounts or savings. It's put to immediate use. This is why it's actually much more efficient to send out stimulus checks to a smaller, focused group of people who will spend it fast, rather than to a broad range of people who may not need the money as urgently. In fact, if they follow this approach, they could stimulate the economy without having to print nearly as much money, potentially only a few $100 billion instead of nearly $1 trillion. This approach could also help avoid massive inflation, which often happens when a huge amount of money is suddenly injected into the economy. Now, you might wonder, will this type of targeted stimulus happen? As of right now, a $2,000 ongoing check hasn't been approved. But in the event of a major recession or economic downturn, studies like this might influence the government's approach. If they focus on lower-income households, they could get a better economic result without the downsides like inflation. In conclusion, this proposal for $2,000 ongoing monthly checks is a big step toward addressing real financial needs in our low-income communities. By focusing on those with high MPCs, mainly low-income individuals and families, we ensure that the money goes right back into the economy, helping everyone involved. I truly hope to see this type of targeted financial support come to life. So, in summary, the next time stimulus checks are considered, a targeted approach focusing on low-income individuals with high MPC could be the most effective way to stimulate the economy. It helps those who need it most, keeps the economy moving, and could even prevent the kind of inflation we've seen in the past. If this topic interests you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more insights. And if you have thoughts, drop them in the comments. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.